Hey guys, John here with the first look at Deus Ex: Mankind Divided. We just got our hands on the game today, and yes, I did ask for this. For those thinking about picking up the game tomorrow though, I wanted to run through the first mission and some of the early moments in the hub environment just to see how both versions stack up. Thankfully, first impressions are overwhelmingly positive here, but there are a few rough spots that we'll get to in a moment. But let's start with the basics. PlayStation 4 runs at a full 1080p while Xbox One goes for 900p instead. Yep, it's the classic split, but thanks to a nice temporal anti-aliasing implementation, it actually looks better than you might think. That said, some folks may not care for the aggressive sharpening filter in use here. It's not bad per se, but an option might have been preferable. Motion blur haters can rejoice, however, as that feature is absent here despite being shown off in some of the early media for the game. It's kinda disappointing to me in a big way, but hey, at least some will be happy, right? There are certainly a lot of neat visual features on display here though that I'm eager to dive into in the next video. That includes the textures and lighting, and the design, which are all top-notch, with the prog-inspired hub here conjuring feelings of Half-Life 2's City 17. You're going to get lovely visuals on either platform though, either way. Though obviously the higher resolution on PS4 definitely gives it an advantage. It's still a looker no matter where you play though. But we were most curious about the actual performance here. Now at this point in the game, it's still too early to pass final judgment obviously, but we're basically looking at 30 frames per second on both platforms with an adaptive VSync in place. That means of course when the frame rate starts to dip under its target, torn frames appear along the upper portion of the image. Now the first mission was actually no problem at all on either machine. We're looking at Xbox One right here, but both consoles did sail right through it at a perfect 30 frames per second without a single hiccup. The sequence following this, however, starts to suggest that we may have a few issues ahead of us. This opening scene is actually not player controlled as you cannot move freely, but you can adjust the camera, and as you can see there is a lot of screen tearing evident on both consoles, in addition to plenty of drops below 30 frames per second. Of the two though, it's clear that Xbox One is struggling more here during this sequence, though PlayStation 4 is certainly suffering in its own way as well. Now, while you do have the camera control here as mentioned before, this really is kind of just a non-interactive scene filled with tons of NPCs on screen, so it was likely designed just to showcase the visuals. But at the same time, having discussed the game with others that have had access to it longer than us, it does kind of sound like screen tearing isn't just isolated to this sequence, so we might run into it a bit later. Once we've played further in the game though, we can definitely report back. Once in the hub world, both consoles actually turn in pretty stable performance here for the most part as we push through the scenery. It's looking really nice here on both platforms, no doubt, and things do hold stable for the most part, but we did spot a few dips here on the Xbox One. Namely, as we approach this point here, a few torn frames pop up. Nothing big, mind you, but it could present an issue later on in some of the more action-packed levels, since we're really just trying to get a feel for what causes the engine to buckle. Another key element in a game like this, then, are the loading times. Now, normal startup loading times aren't necessarily a big deal, but a long loading sequence after death could actually make a game like this very frustrating, especially when you're trying to figure out the best way to get through a certain scene. So, how does it stack up? Well, I tried getting myself killed here in the hub on both systems, and it turns out that PlayStation 4 has a slight advantage, coming in under 30 seconds, while Xbox One takes over 40 instead. Now both versions are just a touch too long for my liking, but it's not unreasonable, and perhaps it'll actually load faster within a mission environment instead of the hub. We'll find out soon enough, but you can also imagine that the PC version should probably be the best choice if you're looking for quick loading. Anyways, that's all for now. Stay tuned as the week of Deus Ex continues here on Digital Foundry. We'll break down all three versions of the game, including the PC version, while examining some of the impressive visual accomplishments on display here. But if you enjoyed this smaller video here, be sure to like and subscribe. And of course, as always, until next time, this is John signing off.